We're delighted to have you here today for this industry conference presented by Christie Digital at the 50th edition of the Toronto International Film Festival, presented by Rogers. My name is Mario Spadafora, and I am TIFF Industry Programming's Production Associate, and it's my pleasure to introduce our next session, Buyers in Focus, Latin America, Finland, Nigeria, and United Kingdom. This candid discussion will offer insight into what drives decisions from navigating the festival circuit to responding to shifting audience trends and platform demands for buyers in acquisition and distribution. Our programming is made possible by the support of all of our sponsors and supporters. A sincere thank you to our presenting sponsors, Rogers, our major sponsors, RBC and Visa, and our major industry supporters, Ontario Creates and Telefilm Canada. Joining us for this conversation is Julian Jacobsen, CEO at BF Distribution, Mikko Aromaa, CEO and Head of Acquisitions at Night Visions Distribution, Victoria Ogar, Head of Distribution at FilmOne Entertainment, and Eleonora Pesci, Acquisitions Manager at Curzon Film. And guiding us through this conversation is Kelly Townsend, editor at Playback. Please join me in welcoming them to the stage.
All right, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us on this TIFF Monday. As Mario mentioned, my name is Kelly. I'm the editor of Playback, which is Canada's, sort of preeminent film and TV publication. But we're not here to talk about Canada today. We're here to talk about the acquisition strategies of the lovely panelists here. So if everyone could just go down the line and introduce themselves as well as their companies. Mikko? Yeah, go for it.
So my name is Mikko Aromaa. I am the head of acquisitions and CEO of Night Visions Distribution based in Finland. And about the company, it's closely associated with a festival also called Night Visions, which happens to be the biggest genre film festival in the Nordic region, taking place in Helsinki, Finland 2 times a year. And we're not only covering Finland when it comes to acquisitions, we have partner companies in Sweden and Norway and Denmark, as I think most of our competitors have as well. So whenever we acquire something, we would acquire it for all Scandinavia and then share between our companies internally when it comes to the rights. And because of this background, of course, the slate of the distribution company is quite genre-driven. Though I always want to point out that our definition or perception of genre is really, really broad. So again, going back to the festival comparisons, I always like to compare Night Visions as a festival to Fantasia here in Canada. And Fantasia is a festival that actually can program pretty much anything in their lineup. Just, kind of branded genre, but not really. So it can be edgy documentaries, it can be edgy dramas, it can be, of course, in addition to the obvious fantasy, horror, science fiction, whatever you have. But then briefly sort of going into the details of our acquisition strategy.
Can we introduce everyone first before we
Sure.
into the details?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Victoria.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Victoria Ogar. I represent FilmOne Entertainment, film and distribution production company based in Lagos, Nigeria. Basically the largest distributor for films in West African markets. We license it to Warner Brothers, Sony, Disney, a couple of independent studios, and we just love to sell films. Our strategy is to watch, review, give feedback. If it works for our market, we take it. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Eleonora Pesci, and I'm the acquisitions manager at Curzon Film in the UK. We're a vertically integrated company, so we are a film distributor, but also own a chain of cinemas. I actually can't remember off the top of my head. I think we do have like 16, 17 cinemas at the moment. There's openings and closings all the time, so I should check that. And one of the leading independent art house film distributors, Curzon, was originally branded as Artificial Eye, started in the 70s, and then merged with Curzon Cinemas, and it grew into this, wonderful reality and great opportunity for me as a buyer for the company of having, the possibility of relying on the cinemas when I'm acquiring films. We'll get into more detail later, but that's a great thing to do when you're mostly focusing on independent foreign language, very often titles that really need to find the space in cinemas as much as possible. So more to follow.
Hello there, I'm Julian Jacobsen. I'm the head of content at BF Distribution. We are a leading distributor in Latin America. We have operations in Chile, Peru, Argentina, Bolivia, Ecuador, but we hold an operation that involves like a theatrical network across all the region. We release an average of 45 movies a year, so that's quite intense, while also distributing all the other rights after theatrical. So our lineup varies like from like Academy Award nominations to genre films, family movies, pretty much anything and everything that has a theatrical component. And yeah, we'll cover that later, what that would be.
I feel like Mikko, I have to go back to you because you're prepared with your
I
strategy.
was just kind of trying to finish my my intro by referring to the acquisition strategy in the sense that whatever we end up acquiring from the genre front, it of course also has to be something that would work at the festival. So that kind of sets some sort of level of quality there that you have to be able to stand behind. So we typically would use the festival as a launch platform of the films or as the test platform of the films. And whenever we do, for instance, physical releases, they are all branded under the Night Visions brand. So it kind of ties your hands in a way that you can't release rubbish.
So in terms of your strategy, does that mean if it's tied to the festival, are you looking at a lot of films just as sort of pre-buy films, or are you also looking at, completed, genre films?
We're mostly focusing on completed product line, and that's how it always been. It's like, okay, there are exceptions to the rule, such as Titan by Julia Ducournau, which we bought at a script stage already, but we like to try to avoid that.
Julian, I wanted to speak to you because, like you said, you release average 45 films a year. So what does that mean in terms of how wide-spanning your strategy is?
Well, I would say like then going to the theatrical component part, which basically it's what defines just this amount of volume. I guess once you have like a setup, an operation that can basically cover the entire region, you have the exhibitors' relationships and the marketing partners. And we represent like some movies from Lionsgate, for instance, and we had like throughout the years like big franchises. Once you have that in place, that gives you also leverage to be able to go to the market and acquire smaller independent movies. But with that environment, you create more awareness and becomes like a bigger movie for that territory. There's actually a very good example that I think would help to understand. Like there's one of my favorite acquisitions cases of ever is Train to Busan, like a Korean zombie movie that super proudly acquired like almost 10 years ago. When we saw that, we were at that time, I think it was Hunger Games coming out that year. And like, wow, we have this amazing Korean film. It was pre-Parasite, so in that sense, like there wasn't that much of awareness on Korean cinema as there is now. We were amazed by the production value, the storytelling, the zombie component. Being told like in that completely entertaining ride that is that movie. And then you have the festival circuit as well for Train to Busan. So you have like critics and audience loving it. And it comes out like a month after the Hunger Games, I think. And of course, in terms of numbers, it didn't do the same, but it was very, very successful in Latin America. So when that happened, the same partners that at one point were like pizza places or, you know, like some deals we had with marketing partners where they were promoting big movies, we could also use as part of that relationship to promote Train to Busan, which was like a small Korean film that ended up grossing $6 million in the box office. So in terms of the strategy of how to curate that, do the curatorship, that's the fun part of my job. That's why I love this. It's such a dynamic position we have, like in terms of acquisitions. I feel like everything's moving all the time. It never gets boring. And I guess when it does, it's because the audience is bored and we have to be more creative and get out of the comfort zone as acquisitions executives and try to be exposed to as many movies and as much material as possible. And early on, to the point of like the stages, like we look at everything, like from script, and then we keep following throughout the years to make sure we can make this lineup as strong as possible and also serve not only the obvious commercial films, but also pearls that we can find out there and make it bigger because of that local power we have. Yeah.
And Victoria, I know FilmOne similarly has a pretty wide-ranging level of films that you release. Can you speak a little to your strategy?
Okay. In Nigeria, we wear two legs, one of which is the studio partnership, because you do not want to churn out just the Nollywood content. So we have the foreign content, which could come from any of the studios, and is pretty much important to the theatrical landscape in Nigeria. So cinema business is very profitable, and as much as possible, we see big blockbuster films come in and they do the numbers. And then you have to mix that with the Nollywood films. These are local films. And if you follow the story of the Nigerian films, you see that there's always a film being created. So we have to also make sure our audience is watching the local films at the same time watch the Hollywood films. Arguably in a year, we could release about 80 films from FilmOne. That's a lot of work. So we don't close. The holidays are the big time, and it's an unending circle. At some point, you just need to be passionate about films. We watch films, and then you market it. Yeah. So the strategy is watch the film. If there's something there, position it, and then market it. Then the audience will come. Yeah.
Perfect. Obviously, with Curzon, Eleonora, it's a little more curated.
I'm intimidated by the amount of films you guys release. We have been releasing, I would say, even fewer in the last, since I started. I started at the beginning of COVID, so great time. It used to be roughly like 25 to 30 titles per year. Now we're down to 20 to 25, but closer to 20, I think. Because, obviously it's been a roller coaster these past few years in the UK, especially because of Brexit as well, which, I always say in the long term will affect us more as distributors, especially, those of us that work on lots of European films and lost all the funding. So that's what I would say affected us even more than the change in audiences' habits into, basically going less to the cinema, or not as much as they used to. And, going back to what you were saying about being bold and experimenting, we've really seen that because, Curzon has often been associated with, older audiences, really going for the art house, auteur-driven kind of films. And those audiences are still there, but obviously, we're realizing more and more we need to go younger. We'll have to. And I want to, because I'm one of them. So, what we've been trying to do, and I have like two great examples from the past 12 months. Is branching out and doing something different. One of these two examples is Kneecap, which obviously was a huge success in the UK and Ireland. Sorry, I forgot to mention, obviously, the territory is UK and Ireland. So, we released Kneecap last year in August. It was massive, and that was new in so many ways for us because it's not an obvious Curzon fit, if some of you are aware of the brand, but also because we came on board very early. As I said, we're a vertically integrated company. We have cinemas, we've got the distribution arm, we've got a development fund, actually, that we launched a few years ago. And in the past few years, we've tried and succeeded a couple of times in basically bridging the gap between development and distribution by stepping into production. And Kneecap was one of those cases where we closed the financing gap. And we did that by partnering up with the sales agent. And then we can come into the importance of stepping into the global landscape more and more. Because for us, for a territory like the UK, which comes with all its difficulties, just betting on the UK as a territory has become incredibly difficult. So we've tried, and we're doing it again on another project, to partner up with sales agents, taking up rights for international as well as UK and Ireland, and trying to recoup or make a profit on both sides, and trying to cross the rights as well if that happens. That's really helpful, and that was excellent with Kneecap. Obviously, it was a huge gamble. And the second title that, really made my year this year is Flow. We don't do a huge amount of animation. In the past, we've done a few more adult-focused animations. We tried Robot Dreams a couple of years ago because we absolutely fell in love with the film. I think as buyers, that's what happens sometimes. You just fall in love with the film and you go for it, even though you have no idea how to deal with that kind of animation. And then Robot Dreams was a great test for us. It wasn't as successful as we hoped it would be. It was actually really successful theatrically. It made a profit, which is a rare thing. It wasn't as successful in terms of TV sales, and that's what we learned. So when we came in on Flow, we knew that we had to be a bit more cautious, and then Flow turned into a phenomenon. So, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to experiment, branch out to new audiences that wouldn't necessarily be associated with Curzon and the Curzon brand, and do new things, which is extremely exciting and terrifying at the same time. But it's worked this year, so.
No kidding. I wanted to talk a little bit about audiences. Here in North America, a lot of what works well is, sort of the action, the IP franchises. And I'm so curious from different regions if that might differ. Julian, I wanted to start with you. What is sort of the Latin American audiences geared toward?
Well, that's $1 million question. Look, to the point, we released Flow as well. And if anything, I'm very proud of that. I think it was right before Berlin, and I would go to the meetings, what is your upcoming release? Like, Flow. This is definitely not part of usually what I have as a lineup because we're so commercial. And then I was so proud and happy that happened. And we had The Substance last year. And at that time, we had Emilia Paris coming up. So it was a very proud moment of me as an acquisitions executive. Because the usual suspects, it comes down to action, horror films, but in family movies, of course. Comedies, very local comedies, like we produce as well. But then we focus in Chilean comedy, Peruvian. It's very much the opposite of global. It doesn't travel, not even from Chile to Peru sometimes. And but what I've noticed, and what we've noticed the past few years, maybe could relate to post-COVID, it's just how quickly the trends have been shifting. I feel like before we would watch the box office for a previous year and say, okay, so let's focus a little bit more. It's working animation. Let's go acquire, have this year turnaround of still taking advantage of that trend. And these days, it's it changes all the time. And I would say the current trend is quite random. It's like weird. We want weird. Like as weird as it gets, probably it's gonna work. So with that in mind, I mean, there's the like production value, cast. Obviously, it helps a lot to position, and not because you were talking about audiences, but also the space exhibitor is willing to give you, so the audience can go and watch. So that's a big part of our work to compete with studios for space, and now they are re-releasing everything. So look at that. So I would say that conversation starters, you know, like the sort of A24 movement that since we released The Whale, and at that time we're like, wow, this when we saw like first material on The Whale, we were concerned, and then look at what happened. So we've been just learning as it goes, and adjusting as well.
Does that resonate with anyone else, that weird sells right now?
Yeah, I would say it's funny because you mentioned The Whale and Float. There is always a story and a hook. Like with The Whale, I think, you know, it was Brendan Fraser's sort of, the brain descent. And, you know, with Flow, you had a very simple pitch and a story that everybody could relate to, I think. And you know, yeah, just get emotional watching. I mean, I don't think I've met a single person who wasn't moved to tears by Flow. Yeah, exactly. So you need a standout, and it's really hard to tell what is going to stand out, what is going to get people talking. But yeah, I think you need something that creates word of mouth. The substance again, you know. Yeah. You need something that people can come out of and say, oh, what about that scene? And what about that moment? Was the same thing with like Everything Everywhere All at Once. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think that's it. I mean, it's not easy to you know, see and identify maybe at script stage, but I think
I also like to redefine my weird. Like it's in the sense of there's something there. This is so different. It is authentic. It's new, original. It's a new take in a story. It moves in a specific. It moves you somehow. So I think like also comes down to emotions, and not only the like the moving part of what The Whale was, but The Whale moved with a lot of emotions. Mm-hmm. Like you felt a lot of things with that movie. The same as The Substance. Like you are excited and disgust and curious and there's, I think movies that end up working, they have a very efficient way of getting to the audience and starting a conversation around a subject. And that helps us with marketing.
I wanted to talk about sort of regional originals a bit. Obviously, Nollywood, that's a big thing for FilmOne. Victoria, what can you speak to a little bit about Nigerian audiences actually watching local content? Because that's not as much of a thing here in Canada, unfortunately.
Okay. I think our first focus is to tell our stories and make sure it is appreciated by our audience. And one of the things that we started to deploy is to take these films internationally. And in this year, we've had about 3 Nollywood movies released in Canadian cinemas. The first one didn't really bring in so much, but the second and the third has been successful. And we have one releasing this weekend. It's called Akim, Seeking Justice, in a few cinemas in Canada. We basically wanted to also make sure that our people here in Canada, in the UK, in the US, can also watch these blockbuster movies being watched at home, and then not necessarily having to wait till it's on Netflix or Prime Videos. So as part of our strategies, we want to be able to grow theatrical window into the global scale. And yes, we know that the audiences would have a taste and also have a benchmark on what they consider quality, and which is why we're trying to improve on our Nollywood stories. So trying to scale it up and is relatable, and you can watch it and understand the drama. We're very dramatic people, and drama works for us. Most of the films that we would produce in Nigeria would be comedy drama. Action, very little. except if it's an action comedy, but it's not the bang bang. So it's more talk. Yeah, and that's been our strength. And I said just recently, last year, we started to see horror films grow. It's been something that our audiences are beginning to respond to. Previous years, we would always reject horror films. We wouldn't show them in our cinemas. But right now, we take them because it is, especially if the IP is known. For instance, Final Destination, that came into our markets and did so well. One of the surprising ones for us this year was Sinners. That one was mind-blowing, and the word of mouth sold it. I think when it was screened in the office, we knew it was a good film, but we didn't know the extent to which the audiences would take it and even start to recreate scenes. Basically, what we can say is if you give the audience the right content, be it drama, Hollywood, Nollywood, Hollywood, people will come out. And then the last one that is very well accepted in our market is the superhero films. Like, people will kill to watch superheroes. No matter how silly the films are, the audience would always come out. They would always dress up, and it's a thing. So we're very fashionable, and you would see people localize the horror franchise into theirs. And then we're looking forward to when Nollywood would be able to create horror films in the sense that it is more like superheroes. We're looking forward to that. Yeah.
That's incredible. I love the idea of everyone dressing up. That's nice. So I wanted to get back to your point about the horror performing well. Obviously, Mikko, you're an expert in that genre. So have you seen sort of a growth in the audience demand for horror, at least in your neck of the
Well, I
woods?
mean, you can see that in the annual box office statistics, and you can see that in the number of studio titles that are actually coming to our turf to compete against the cool independent stuff that we're releasing. So it's been kind of frustrating also to see that happen, especially post-COVID, because it's the big studio horror films that are taking more and more space. And whereas there used to be at least a couple of slots in the theatrical schedule over the year that would not have been, overcrowded with the studio stuff, now it feels that they're actually really attacking us on all fronts. Just as an example, like Nosferatu, January used to be a safe space for us, February to an extent, but now with Nosferatu, I'm 100% sure that in January and in February there's going to be a big studio horror title that's going to be kind of, taking up the space in the market, also in Scandinavia.
Yeah, I think we just saw it again with the new Conjuring film. I think it was #1 at the box office this weekend, right? Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, obviously we addressed there's a lot of uncertainty in the market right now. It's hard to know what is going to perform. But what are some of the tools that you use to sort of track maybe audience data and help you make decisions? Maybe Julian, I'll start with you.
Well, I would say that we, from all fronts, like we try to be up to date with what are the books. Like Wattpad, it's something that we follow a lot on like TikTok trends, what people are talking about, what's the like subjects or books people are willing to see. Usually the rights, in terms of optioning, they're gone, but then we can track and see what they are, and try to be involved as early on, like already IP based like ideas. But that's pretty much like research. And we keep track, obviously, of box office and trying to look at what's happening in Japan, for instance. And because Japanese animes, huge, like I guess worldwide, but Latin America, it's been bigger and bigger. We actually re-releasing like a lot of the Studio Ghibli catalog. And it's very impressive just how that this event takes people out of the theater. Out of home to go to the theaters. And that's the thing, like rather than looking at what they've watched, is the reasons why they are going to. And I think like creating an event around something, being like alternative content, or not relying only on data because that's the basics, but like what made that release work? Like what's the reason besides the content that these people decided to go and watch it? And to that point, like release date, it's really, really, really important. And of course, that's very complicated right now. As independents, we attend like CinemaCon, for instance, in April. We go there and basically watch all the studio presentations to try and get a feeling of maybe this one that it looks big is not going to be as big, and to try and counter program and find our space out in the sun, because in the end of the day, that's going to make like a big difference in the results and just the maintenance in the screening rooms. But yeah, like trying to be as out there and informed as possible, like about what's going on.
Has anyone else experienced issues sort of figuring out the scheduling for a film? Any interesting stories there?
Yeah, I would say yes. Reasons being that we try not to just sell the studio films. We also sell the Nollywood films. Now, with post-COVID, you see that the studio films have become so much that every month there's a blockbuster. Every now and then there's a film. And it's quite difficult to position these films. And then the audiences are not having to pick which should watch. For instance, in the month of, I think it was July, there was Superman, and then there was Fantastic Four. Typically, you would have a break, at least 2 months break before one big Hollywood film comes in. But now, you're having two films struggling for the same screens, struggling to gather the same audience, and then you still want to be able to support other independent Hollywood films. Now we have Nollywood films who also want to be treated as blockbusters. So for us, the dating is a problem. It's a serious problem because you can't say no to the Hollywood blockbuster, and you also have to preserve the Nollywood films. So strategy to just absorbing everything in the cinema is to make sure that Nollywood films are well marketed. We have to eventicize them. We have to put in a lot of fashion. We need to make it look like if you don't watch it, then you're not watching anything. And then also work with a lot of influencers, be at the messages of the actors, a lot of partnership, looking for communities. I think that I would say that next year is going to be worse. Looking at the slate of Hollywood, like it is quite, I don't know how to imagine it, but I think that if this year was bad, next year will be worse. And it is all how we can be creative about it, in the sense that we need to marry both titles together, be it those studio films, be it the independent Hollywood films, and be it the local Nollywood films. And that's what we're trying to do. And then statistics these days are not working anymore. Audiences would say young adults would watch a film. You would release the film and then you don't find the young adults. So we've seen that when you market a film properly, then the older adults, the younger adults would come watch it. So for us, marketing is the key, and we spend so much on marketing. Yeah.
To that point, I mean, is there a bit of a volume problem in terms of the film industry these days, that there's just so much coming out and the ability to get everyone's attention is difficult? I don't know who wants to tackle that.
I
Yeah.
totally agree there is.
Absolutely. And you know, I mean, it's still very tricky. But there are periods, well, at least in the UK, when, again, for a mainly art house focused distributor, there's good slots to release. Like a positive example, and I can't believe I'm being so positive today. I'm usually much more negative. Is Lucky Meta last year, which we acquired just the previous year in Cannes, completed stage, didn't win anything, got really good press, had a name in the cast that is meaningful in the UK, and Josh O'Connor. It was I think, like complete madness around Josh O'Connor, but he was growing. And the film didn't get selected as the Italian Oscar submission, so we decided to wait, and we basically released it a year after its Cannes premiere. And the reason being, and we got a bit lucky, because Challenges got postponed, so we decided to wait for that to be released. I think Challenges was released in April, and we scheduled La Chimera to go out 3-4 weeks after. We didn't know it was going to be huge, and that Josh was going to become massive. Well, not overnight, but much, much bigger. And that really paid off at a time when there's, in the UK at least, a desperate need for quality art house titles, because the award season is over. Weather is getting really nice, and Brits like to go out whenever that happens, because it doesn't happen very often. So, but that means that there's fewer and fewer distributors who want to put out their films then, and that's exactly what we did. And La Chimera ended up opening, I think, on the warmest summer weekend of the year, and it still got to a 1 million box office, which is very, very good for the kind of film that it is. Josh O'Connor or not Josh O'Connor, it's very art house. But it managed, because of the Challenges effect, a little bit like Train to Busan coming after Hunger Games, get in that younger crowd that was very keen on following Josh and ended up really loving the film. But it's a delicate balance, because you need to have a very good film, a name in the cast ideally, the press to get the older audience in, and then, the studio mainstream title that really launches your actor and helps you with a campaign without us having to do that much.
Yeah. And then you can trailer with the ones that are in the high season before that.
Yeah.
So, but I think this conversation that we're having, it pretty much talks about the end of the cycle when the movie reaches the theatrical. But I just wish, and I think it's more and more this has to be considered when creating the movie. I just wish preserving obviously the creative aspect, the art, the vision, and all of that of brilliant and visionary filmmakers that if you give them formulas, they wouldn't have made amazing movies that we all love. But it doesn't hurt that in the process you remember that it's such a crowded marketplace, and if possible, try to have elements that will help the distributor to position your movie in, again, not only before the audiences, but before whoever is going to give you where to show it, being even a platform or the exhibitors itself. So elements such as this is going to be a good idea for a poster, a trailer. There's some movies that they have great ideas, but it lacks marketing elements. Even if you're on set, you have everyone there, just make sure you have good stills, and just create a poster at that moment and do a good EPK and making of and as many things you can, because you're in production. The money is there, the cameras are there, just do it, and then we can go and sell the movie.
No, that's a really good point. In terms of, especially thinking about marketing early on, I think a lot of people struggle with that. And so going in early, how much do you, the rest of you, sort of see that issue, sort of, working, especially with if there's independent films, not really thinking about the marketing until you're sort of halfway through post-production.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we've been pre-buying more often. Not only because of that, but we see it as an opportunity to say, okay, we're pre-buying
we're
this.
Gonna do this.
We need this, and we need that. And we have an animation that it's in production, and they take forever. And we made sure that they are actually making the piece now that is Cinépolis in Latin America or Cinemark. Our and they're if you would ask them 2 years from now when this movie is going to come out, we will never be able to get that piece. And that makes a big difference for us independents, because the studios have the shut down your cell phones, those materials that start to get into the kids, the families' minds as they go to the theaters the previous months. And you're like, oh, I know that character. Yeah. And then becomes bigger, and it's the option they will hopefully take when it's out there playing.
So maybe a bigger question. Elements like that, does that sort of push a lot of distribution companies to want to get in as early as possible, and sort of in the development stage to be able to shape that creative? I guess I'll.
Well, yeah, it does for us. I mean, it's not the only reason that we want to, I want us to come in earlier on more projects. Development is tricky. Development is hard. It's long. I'd definitely like us to come on board more often on the production stage, on the financing side, like we did with NECAP. We're doing it again on Clive Bernard's new film. Obviously, it's easier. Again, we're quite small compared to all of you guys. Work on like smaller, more independent films, but someone like Clive Bernard, she's an established UK director. We've worked with her before. It made a lot of sense to come on board early on that one. As you said, we had a day on set that we arranged, and we literally forced them. We're like, we need like a still photographer. We need to get some material because it's happening. Everybody's there. The cast is young. It's they're all like hot, going into exciting projects. So we need to get them together and get some material. So we did exactly that, and that's what I want us to do a little bit more, because if you do it once, it's a gamble and it might go very right, but it also might go very wrong. The job itself, there's no secret formula, there's no secret recipe, so you need to not put all your eggs in one basket and diversify and get a bunch of projects, and some of them will deliver, some will not, and it will all just balance itself out, and it will work. So yeah, definitely love to pre-buy more.
Perfect. Well, we've reached the Q&A portion of the discussion. So anyone just raise your hands if you have any question. Yes, right in the front.
Hi, congratulations on NECAP.
Thank you.
I'm the unofficial Canadian NECAP ambassador. So I'd like to, but my question is international co-productions. You're involved in financing at Curzon, but do you get involved at any point with like an organic international co-production?
So sorry, repeat the question just first. The question was for Curzon specifically, how much they get into international co-productions.
Yeah. So NECAP was a peculiar one because we didn't develop the project, but we were on this program called Mother Tongues. And we partly financed it. It was a program to look for it was a call for projects in languages. Well, UK projects that were in languages other than English. Case in point, NECAP, which is half in Irish, and it's all about language. So, we had first look on the projects. NECAP really stood out. We did that in partnership with Sharad, a sales agent. So that was the opportunity to come on board internationally, because obviously there were lots of question marks. It was a debut. It was going to be a film about a rap group from Belfast. We were partly known outside of Ireland at the time. They're huge now, but at the time they weren't. And they were going to play themselves, and they'd never acted. And, there were lots of, okay, this could go very wrong. So neither us or Shiraz were like, yes, let's just go in on our own. But because there were really valid partners on board, excellent producers, the script was great, the pitch was great. We're like, let's try it, but let's share. So that's how it happened. And it was, from the start, it was going to be a UK and Ireland co-production, but that's a natural thing. It happens all the time. International co-productions, we're looking at them more. It hasn't happened yet. Hopefully it will with some projects we have in development. It's definitely uncharted territory for us. We'll see how it goes, but I'm sure, love to do definitely something with France, and I think it's around the corner. And the idea is usually to work, for instance, with the French sales agent who knows the territory and how to set it up. So that's, how it went. Thank you.
Yeah, right in front.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Romina. I wanted to ask, you guys been talking about film in general. that it's not an actual feature film?
The question is, do they do series as well as film? Who wants to tackle that? Mostly no's.
I wish. For theatrical, no, but we do the ancillary window, and this can be TVOD, could be TVOD, could be SVOD, could be AVOD. Yeah, so we're open to doing things like that, distributing. Yeah.
Yes, over here.
I'll piggyback on this gentleman's question. When you're talking about co-production or coming in early on a project that's in development, because you said you like to do that, which is interesting to me, does it need to be co-production? Are you looking at things domestic that you get involved in at that stage? Because I'm not sure quite how the co-production works, if this question makes sense.
I think your question is whether they only board co-productions or she would also board like domestic UK productions?
Yes.
My
Oh,
domestic
your-
territory, yeah.
Yeah, in your territory. Can it be somewhere else, or does it need to be filming in your territory?
I mean, filming is not, you know, I mean, we're not strict about that. You know, given, again, our size and everything, it needs to be, to a degree, British. It doesn't have to be exclusively British. It hasn't been, again, with Kneecap. But it's you know, it really depends. Like if it's a director that we love and you know have worked with and followed and you know doing something somewhere else that has absolutely nothing to do with the UK, but you know it's something we want to be involved with, then yes, absolutely. If it's something a bit earlier in the career of the filmmaker, for instance, then it's ideal for it to be local because it's just, you know, it's usually where we can help more and the film is likely to have, you know, a bit more success to start with, and then it can go and travel if it works well. Ideally, a degree of Britishness when it's a debut, for instance, is ideal.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. I don't see any hands. Oh, wait, I do. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. I do see someone right at the back there.
This is a question for Julian. I was wondering what was the percentage of documentaries that you usually acquire every year? Or are you interested in acquiring documentary?
The question is whether BF Distribution is interested in acquiring documentaries.
Not exactly. I would say no. I don't want to be rude, but let's say like we've tried like twice, and I mean theatrically they didn't have space, so it has to. I mean we've been doing some alternative content these days, but then we do more like concert documentaries where there's like a musical element to it, like a famous performer. And there would be like one or two like events, and then we would take digitally. So the other two, the first two ones we had was like sports based, and it was a good run for digital. But you know, given I mean I think like in terms of theatrical, there's not really a space for it.
Anyone else open to documentaries?
I'd love to do more, but we have a very similar issue in the UK, like you know what you mentioned, the documentaries that sort of perform and sort of, not always, theatrically. And again, as a theatrical distributor, that's what we're looking first and foremost are the music ones that you know, I'm sure the Elvis Presley live doc will do very well, but the rest is really, like sadly, tough theatrically. So there is specialized documentary distributors who, you know, have the relationships with TVs and sell packages and, you know, keep it going. But the result theatrically at the box office is too small for us to sustain financially. We've done the occasional documentary because we knew we were backed by a healthy TV sale that made the bottom line make sense. Otherwise, it's just, I wish we could do more, but not yet. Hopefully, TV will support more and we'll do more.
All right, well, I think that's all the time we have for the session today. So I want to thank the panelists so much for joining us today. If everyone give them a round of hand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody.